good things about living in Wilmslow are its proximity to Manchester and open countryside, fabulous walks, great schools, good shops, good food, great bars, nice sense of community.
It's a great place to live. It has just about everything you need. Perfect.
If Old Liège was a three-course meal, the starter would probably be caviar.
Followed by lobster and then a very rich chocolate dessert.
Mark Steele's in town.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Mark Steele's in Town, which this week comes from the Cheshire town of Wilmslow, which is by far the most upmarket place that this programme has been to so far. A perfect place, I have to say, to go shopping, as long as you're in desperate need of a Prada bloody handbag. If you want a pound of potatoes, you've got to go to Macclesfield. I'm sure every road coming in here has got a bouncer stood there as people coming in going, "No jeans, sir." "Not with those shoes, madam. Try Knutsford." And we're tonight at the Green Room Theatre, which is a very sweet, petite little theatre, and probably about half the size of most people's living rooms. I think that's probably why there's not a big theatre in Wilmslow. Probably most people here just go, if we want to see Midsummer Night's Dream, we just ring up Alan Rickman and Judi Dench and they come round and do it on the veranda. So, we're 14 miles south of Manchester, apparently. Pretty much the first thing you see if you come here is the Aston Martin showroom. It's a town that is known as the Knightsbridge of the North, except they wouldn't allow a branch of Harrods to open up here as it would lower the tone of the area. And it's an area that includes the very much new-moneyed world of Alderley Edge, with its footballers and its Coronation Street stars. I went there for the first time a few weeks ago, and in the post office window, the first card I saw said, "Ring me if you need a butler." Rio Ferdinand lives here, Alex Ferguson, Andrew Flintoff, Wayne Rooney is here, David and Victoria Beckham lived here, and they all buy these huge houses for about 7 million quid, and then they instantly knock them down and build a new one in its place. If any of those people sort of ever went to Greece for some reason, the archaeologists of the world would cack themselves, wouldn't they? Because they know in about 3 weeks' time there'll be an interview in Heat magazine with them going, "Well, we bought the Parthenon and knocked it down, and now we've got a lovely sauna in its place." Property is obviously a central issue here. I had a look at a website called propertyconfidential.com. They were boasting about a luxury bungalow on sale for £1.75 million. And it's got a swimming pool and a sauna and all these sorts of things. And then it said, honestly, this is exactly the words, "But this luxury bungalow also boasts an additional and unique feature of a second floor." So, as a result of all this, because the place is full of interior designers, apparently there is Dawn Ward, who designed the Rooney's house, and she says that one of her favourite creations, of which she is most proud, is a glass floor in the hall, which means that you can look down to the snooker room below. One of her other creations is a child's wardrobe in the shape of a walk-in castle with a ceiling twinkling with 9,000 Swarovski crystals stuck on by hand. Well, I hope it gets sold by IKEA. So some idiot sat there for 6 months going, "Locate crystal 1084 and attached to battlement pinion D." All the estate agents mention that these houses have a media room. That's mad. They just invent rooms. They've got so many rooms, they have to invent purposes for them. They probably sit there going, "Oh, it's not fair. Michael Carrick's got a crematorium in his house. And the Flintoffs have got a particle collider." You don't need need a separate room for every human activity other than the toilet. That one I'll accept. Now, all this demolition has provoked associations that strive to preserve the old villagey feel of Alderley Edge, and this association, striving to preserve the old villagey feel of Alderley Edge, I would think is contender for the title of the most unsuccessful organisation in the world. along with the Taliban Whiskey Tasting Society. The society got particularly annoyed with Cristiano Ronaldo, who knocked down an old house and built one that was called offensive and insensitive. So the association attempted to set up a referendum to change the local planning rules, but, and I'm quoting the local website Go Alderley Edge here, the referendum plan has now been scrapped as the cost would have meant the village was unable to afford to put up Christmas lights this year. How does that work? 90% of the world's wealth passes through this area, and you're going, we can't afford a referendum and Christmas lights? That's probably because your Christmas lights were made of Swarovski bloody crystals, isn't it? Well, walking around the shops around here is a bit like being on the Antiques Roadshow, because every 10 minutes I find myself going, how much? There is a Bernardo's charity shop in Alderley Edge, so you think, oh right, so there's some ordinary bits here, but in the window is stuff from like Gucci and Dolce and Gabbana with no price tag. In the charity shop. The charity shop's going, if you want to know the price, you can't afford it. In the charity shop. None of the normal shopping rules seem to apply. One of the beauty salons is called Esthétique, and the subheading on the shop says, beauty, well-being, science. What? So as they're doing your nails, do they go, according to quantum mechanics, these extensions have no fixed resting place in the universe? There's another one that advertises 3D eyelashes. This is an amazing technique that will make your eyelashes look as if they really are there. Of course, you will need to get your friends to wear special glasses to be able to see them. One place that I did like, and I've been there twice, was the Alderley Edge chip shop, which is brilliant. Fish and chips that are brilliant, and for a moment you can imagine that you are actually somewhere normal. And then on the menu it says, and I quote again, we often get celebrities in our chip shop. We would be grateful if you would respect their right to eat their meal in privacy. Thank you. In the chip shop! And, of course, there is also the Panacea Bar, which replaced the place that mysteriously burnt down. Are you sure this is a real town and you're not in a soap opera? The history of Wilmslow says, and this is the official history book, the motto of Wilmslow is Wilmslow, a pleasant place to live. That's not really a motto, is it? Mottos are supposed to be inspiring and in Latin or something. It should be Sancti Optimus Aston Martinius or something. I think Hannibal would have terrified Rome if he'd led his troops by going, we fight for Carthage, for it is a pleasant place to live. One surprising thing about Wilmslow, there doesn't seem to be a big entertainment scene in the town itself. For example, the website called What's On in Wilmslow says, and I quote, cinemas, theatres, music venues, museums and galleries are all within an hour's drive of Wilmslow. There's everything here, isn't there? As long as you include within the parish boundary Manchester and Liverpool and Wales, it should carry on. Also, in Wilmslow, all the excitement of a Brazilian carnival is available within a 14-hour flight. Some things do happen here. The Wilmslow Express reported a mum of two turned have-a-go hero and hit a burglar for 6 with a cricket bat. The bat had been used in the Ashes series by the England squad after her husband bid for it in a charity auction. Isn't that brilliantly Wilmslow? You can't just attack burglars with any tacky bat. She was probably wandering around the house going, what shall I attack them with? Oh, not this cheap worn-out thing. What will the burglars think? The family that became the main landowners in the town in the 1400s were the de Traffords. Back then there were rivalries between different areas within the Traffords land. The names of the different people that lived in these parts then, brilliant names, the Huffites and the Mossites. They're proper names for rival gangs. You can imagine a programme on the History Channel going, the Mossite horde swept through the plains of Prestbury until the ruthless Huffite clans defeated them in a bitter battle, taking over their land and then knocking down their settlements to build a fully modernised 16-bedroom fort with a media room and glass floor for viewing the downstairs jousting. From the 1400s onwards, things pretty much ticked along for about 400 years, because there were only a few settlements in the area at the time, and there was nothing really in Alderley Edge at all. Wilmslow did have sort of a bit of industry, quite a bit of industry, around the time of the Industrial Revolution. There were 3 cotton mills, there was a button industry, this was a shirt factory, apparently, this theatre at one point. But if you were working class round here in Victorian times, you weren't always held in the highest esteem. A local vicar at the time said about one road in the poor area, the people of Moss Lane are so sinful that they don't deserve a chapel. I'd like to have heard him on Thought for the Day in the morning. Jesus said that we should love the sinner and hate the sin. But then again, he'd never been to Moss Lane. He wouldn't have been so bloody liberal if he'd seen those savages, would he? The area was obviously, as was true of anywhere in Britain, this area was transformed by the Industrial Revolution, especially the railway, but in a slightly different way from many other places. The railway was built from Liverpool to Crewe, and then Sir Thomas Trafford did a deal with the railway company that, as well as a station called Wilmslow, another station would be built in what was pretty much empty fields down the road called Alderley Edge. And this land would be sold off to pretty much the managers and executives of the mills in Manchester as a quiet place to live where they could commute into town without having to live near the filth that they were causing down the road. But of course it wasn't just mill owners and landowners here. There was a few rich people. Of course, this is always the case. A few rich people in an area can dominate a place because their houses take up more space, obviously. And this is what happened when the cotton executives moved in. One account of the time by Catherine Chorley describes one regular lesson at the girls' school, how to keep their backs straight in a ladylike fashion. She said, after midday dinner, the girls all had to lie flat on our backs on the floor for 10 minutes to straighten our spines so we could hold ourselves well, while the mistress in charge read to us from that day's Daily Telegraph. I want to see that turned into a fitness video with Davina McCall. Keep that spine as straight as you can, deep breaths in time to the letters page, and sir, it would appear from the most recent utterances of those that speak for the trade unions that once again they wish the honest citizen to be held ransom in lieu of the, come on, keep the back straight, outrageous demands, deep breaths now, surely we must countenance a return to the virtues of corporal punishment, stretch and relax. The purpose, of course, of this thinking and of all these customs must have been to create a culture, as we know, that set them apart from the normal world. But there is something else apart from the excellent social breeding that is very attractive about this area, which is the edge itself, which is a sort of inland sandstone cliff that sticks out in this giant ridge. It's all over the oldest copper mines in Britain. And I'd spent an afternoon up there. It is marvellous, and it feels sort of much more adventurous than normal countryside, because it's all sort of just slightly dangerous. Every now and again you go up to the edge of the edge, as it were, and you can see right across Manchester and up to Bolton, and there's all these pennines everywhere, and you look down, and then suddenly you go, "Dad, there's a 5-mile drop down there from the cliff. I'm used to London. Isn't there an announcer going, 'Mind the gap'?" Any other local authority, they'd put 5 miles of metal railing along there and not let you within a mile without a hard hat and an introductory film about the dangers of falling off a cliff. So also, it does feel like the sort of place where you might meet a hobgoblin. It's got that slightly weird, mystical air about it. There is, of course, the Wizard's Well, which is there to mark the wizard who is said to live beneath the rocks, and at the well itself, which, to be picky, isn't strictly speaking a well, but a trickle of water dribbling down a rock. There is a face of the wizard which has been scratched out, sort of chiselled out of the stone. And there is a poem chiselled out there as well that goes, "Drink from this and take thy fill, for the water falls from the wizard's will." I wonder if, like, a little bit further along, there's another stone with an inscription, "The wizard's spell has worked once more. This bungalow has a second floor." And then there's a collection of stones up there known as the Druid Circle, and this is all quite sweet, but after a while you think, oh, what next? Someone going to go, "Oh, and you see that clump of mud you've just trodden in? Ah, with that goes an ancient rhyme, smear it thrice upon your chin, your arse becomes a mandolin," or something. The novelist Alan Garner, who is from this area, wrote the magical stories, The Weird Stone of Brisangamen and The Moon of Gombrath, and they're both set in Alderley Edge, in all that sort of mysteriousness that happens up there. There's a bit I loved in the first one. The kids are being chased by the Hound of the Morrigan, which is a 4-foot-high, snarling dog creature with no eyes. So they run through a cupboard into a cave, and then the cupboard disappears, and then it says, "That's torn it," said Colin. See, I can believe that. Because when you find yourself passing through a magical vortex to be buried in earth fleeing the snarling Hound of Morrigan, you are likely to get frustrated and shout, "That's torn it." I'm not proud, it just came blurting out. The most interesting celebrity from these parts, I think, is quite possibly Lindo Peat. In 1984, a body was discovered in the Peat Bog in Lindo, on the edge of the town. So Wilmslow resident Peter Reinbart went to the police and owned up to the murder of his wife, who he had dumped in that bog a few years earlier. And it then turned out that the newly discovered body had been lying in the bog since around 50 BC. You just have to hope that Peter Reinbart had a sense of humour and went, "Yeah, well, I've done that one as well." Now, the body became known as Lindo Peat, and the peat had preserved him perfectly to the extent that his last meal was still intact in his stomach. Now, one of the first things that the archaeologists discovered was that his hands were smooth, suggesting that he'd been part of the elite in the community. So it's exactly the same here, even in the bloody Iron Age. I bet even in the Stone Age round here, people went, "Would you like to see my cave paintings? They're in the media room." The confusing part of the story of Lindo Peat is that he'd been garrotted and banged on the head. So it seems that he was murdered. And there is a theory that he was sacrificed in a druid ritual in the hope that the gods would thank the people of Wilmslow by keeping the Romans away. But whatever the reason was, he's now in the British Museum, which you probably call the Wilmslow Museum, as it's only 5 hours' drive away. A more recent star of Wilmslow was a man called Romany. His uncle was a Romany preacher, and Romney broadcast a children's show about nature on the radio from 1932. Now, there is something brilliant, I think, about the way that Romney is celebrated here. His painted Romney caravan is a little monument in the car park outside the library. And there is also another local figure who, for brilliant reasons, I think, is commemorated, and that is Alan Turing. He's commemorated for his achievements as a mathematician and a philosopher. So I wonder if he ever discussed his work down the Panacea bar. What do you do? Well, I'm a mathematician and a philosopher. Oh, right, that's like me then, because 14's my lucky number, and sometimes I wonder why that is. Alan Turing was set to work by the government at Bletchley Park during the Second World War to break the coded messages that the German Navy was sending out to its fleet with its Enigma machine. It seems that Turing, in his own mind, he wasn't just trying to break codes and defeat the Nazi Navy. He had a sort of a higher aspiration, if you like. He saw this as part of his quest for building a machine that could remember and repeat data to solve complex problems. And his success in that means that, in a way, he can be said, in effect, to have invented the computer. Now, his models obviously weren't as advanced as the computers that we're familiar with, but the principles were clearly in place. But there was one thing which he clearly wasn't able to overcome, which was the difficulty of being gay at a time when being gay was against the law. Now, this hostility was especially strong in the military. I suppose the thinking was, yes, well, a chap like Turing might be able to crack the codes detailing German U-boat positions, but is he a proper man? So he pretended that he wasn't gay, even to himself. But then in 1952, he started going out with a man that he'd met at a cinema in Manchester. And this led to them both being arrested and threatened with prison, and he was barred from doing any further work at all for security. Turing was offered an alternative to jail, which was to undergo hormonal injections to reduce his sex drive, one of the side effects of which was that he grew breasts, because it was important to insist that men stick to behaviour that is natural as God intended, such as growing breasts. So 2 years later, he laced an apple with cyanide and used that to commit suicide. And there is now a statue of Alan Turing in Manchester in which he's holding up an apple. And there's a plaque on the house that he lived in Wilmslow. But that statue's in bad taste, isn't it? Of all the things he did, they show him holding the object he used to kill himself. It'd be like if there was a statue of Elvis with him on the toilet eating a burger. So there's this image then of Wilmslow as just a big festival of vacuous wealth and daft celebrity. But underneath all this side of Wilmslow, there is a much deeper a sense of something going on, I think, something else going on. The side that celebrates Romney and Alan Turing. And just as in the 1700s and the days of the mills, like everywhere, it has got its working class side, because somebody must do the building and the teaching and the cleaning. You can't all be selling Aston Martins to each other. There's a hip-hop scene in Wilmslow, including a crew who do a song called Wilmslow Rap, who rather splendidly managed to rhyme "feeling the pressure with living in Cheshire," which I admire very much. You've got your own big issue seller, I notice, in the precinct there. I bet you all walk past going, "Oh, it must be dreadful. That poor man must be without a second home." And in Alderley Edge, there is a subterranean world of normalness going on underneath all the madness. I went to the Alderley Edge Working Men's Union Club. I think, oh, am I going to go in there? But this is where the working class of Alderley Edge go, and they're all in there at the bar going, "Oh, I'll have a Dom Perignon shandy and some truffle scratchings, please." So, John, who accompanied me there last night, is it a haven from all the craziness that goes on around?
It is the one place that you can actually buy a pint of beer whereby you don't require a mortgage in Alderley Edge to buy it. The fact that nobody goes in it is something of a tragedy, as you probably witnessed last night, because we were the only people there. So, which probably... probably
that sort of
reflects
spoils my point in a way. But there's a working class in Alderley Edge fighting for the workers. There's nobody at all.
That's right.
There's a bar, and there was me and John, and we had a game of snooker.
That's it.
John, who, apart from being a wonderful chap who showed us around the area many times in the last few weeks, all of what I've said here could be said much more succinctly in a few lines of poetry. A round of applause, please, for John, who's going to give it...
Debbie comes from Wythenshawe. She doesn't live there anymore. She's married Des, whose deals are dark, who lives in fear of the copper's narc. But they've got an apartment in St Hilary's Park, and they think that life is such a lark in Alderley. Debbie's one ambition, her single-minded mission, is to be seen in Cheshire life as the ultimate bottle-blonde trophy wife, all bleached white teeth and orange tan, on the arm of a very successful man. But Desmond doesn't seem so keen. He's afraid if his face is seen, someone will remember him and say, "I've seen him on Crime Watch UK." He was the one who got away at that robbery down at Heathrow. That was about 18 months ago, before they lived their millionaire lifestyle, all pink champagne and 3-foot shag pile, in Alderley. But sure enough, at some posh frocks do, Debbie's dream at last comes true. Ooh, they both get snapped at Chester races, but a reader who remembers faces spots our Des and makes a call. Well, the cops are there in no time at all. At St Hilary's Park it causes a buzz when Des is hauled off by the fuzz. Now he's doing time in Dartmoor, while Debbie's back in Wythenshawe. But she's met a divorcee who sells mobile phones. He's just about to buy a dinky home off a bloke in Moss Lane who's moving abroad. Something to do with a timeshare fraud. So Debbie will be back here soon, all bling and blonde in the bubble room, on that street of shame called London Road, or Sodom and Gomorrah, if truth be told. But that's our village destiny. 'Twas ever thus in Alderley.
Thanks very much for that, John, confirming all that I've been arguing for. You've produced a novelist here with his mystical children's tales set in Wilmslow and Alderley Edge. And so, to finish with, I can read an extract from his next book, Alan Garner's next book, about the mysteries of Alderley Edge. I know it sounds weird, but it's true, Colin insisted. I fell in the road, and as I looked up, there was the strangest creature I'd ever seen. A giant 2-floored bungalow. Oh, no, it's 20 to 12, said Billy. Remember the challenge of Zarbius? We have to visit a cinema, a theatre, a museum, a music fellow, and an art gallery before midnight, or we'll be turned into earwigs. That's torn it, said Colin.
Mark Steele's in Town was written and performed by Mark Steele, with additional material by Pete Sinclair. The producer was Julia Mackenzie.